Now our closer look at the growing firestorm over that arrest of a University of Virginia honors student, captured on video. A confrontation that left the 20-year-old bleeding on the pavement. Many now asking if officers went too far. And the owner of the bar where the incident began is now speaking out. ABC's Lindsay Davis has the latest.
Yo, his head is bleeding! Yo, his head is bleeding!
This morning, Virginia State Police actively investigating why 20-year-old UVA student Martise Johnson ended up bloodied and under arrest.
I got him dead, racist!
Once again, sparking a national conversation about police brutality.
There are a lot of people at school here that were not surprised, wouldn't be surprised, but thought that it was racially motivated.
On UVA's campus Friday, a meeting between law enforcement and students turned contentious. Black students ultimately walking out in protest. Johnson was among them. One day after his arrest, Johnson, with 10 stitches in his head, stood by his attorney, who spoke out on his behalf.
The trauma from what the ABC officers did yesterday will stay with me forever.
His attorney says the trauma happened when Johnson was denied entrance to this popular pub and was then questioned by alcohol beverage control agents responsible for enforcing alcohol laws and combating underage drinking. He says Johnson never used a fake ID. The officers involved described Johnson as belligerent. The owners of the bar say they disagree.
I didn't think he was intoxicated at all. It was very cordial.
Those officers have now been placed on administrative duties pending the outcome of a state investigation.
And we're going to get to the bottom of it, and somebody's going to have to answer for it. But let's at least let the investigation run its course.
While not all students here are protesting,
I'm all for equality, but equality that's due process, not mob mentality, which is what I'm seeing here.
Many here say at a school where only 6% of the student body is black, race was likely a major factor.
So you don't think that if it had been a white student who was underage entering a pub, that he would have been arrested also?
I do not believe so. If he had been arrested, he would not have been assaulted.
For This Week, Lindsay Davis, ABC News, Charlottesville.
Our thanks to Lindsay. And joining us now, Chief Tim Longo from the Charlottesville, Virginia Police Department, where the UVA campus is located. Chief, let me ask you this morning, do you believe those officers went too far from what you have seen?
You know, I think the Virginia State Police investigation will best answer that. I will tell you that what is depicted on video is unfortunate. It's tragic. It's certainly disturbing to me as a law enforcement official, and frankly, disturbing to this community. Look, this campus, these students, this community, this city has been through a lot in the past several months, and once again, here we are on a national stage over just an unfortunate event.
Well, the owner of the bar, as you heard, talked about Martise Johnson having a legal right to be in that establishment and that he did not appear to be intoxicated in the least.
Yeah, that's certainly what the statement reveals. That's certainly what the owner said based on what I've just heard. And again, that will be a factor that I'm sure the investigation will consider as it evaluates the reasonableness of the officer's actions. My concern, my focus is helping this community restore and move forward and continue to have a really important discussion with the students here on grounds about race and the relationship of our community with our police departments.
And Chief Longo, you talked to many students on Friday night in a meeting, a lot of black students, 100 black students from UVA, and they didn't seem satisfied with your answer to this question. Why has there been a pattern of escalation, especially on black bodies?
You know, it's a difficult question to answer. I think that's a national discussion that we need to have. You know, law enforcement depends so much on relationship with its citizens, and when any aspect of our citizenry feels threatened, feels that they're not being treated fairly, that disrupts my ability to have that relationship and carry out the function of what I call relational policing. So I think together we're going to try to figure out exactly the answer to that question, and I'm committed to this student body and to this community to continue to have that discussion. I did meet with the chapter president of the NAACP on Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, and then again on Friday we met. We've had an email exchange over the weekend, and I'm committed to continuing to work with the students.
So let me just ask you this. What needs to change?
I think attitudes need to change. I think hearts need to change. You know, this is a difficult discussion. It's an uncomfortable discussion, as we all saw on Friday afternoon, with students that are hurt and are angry and are needing and wanting and deserving of answers. We need to keep this discussion alive and well, and law enforcement, frankly, needs to be reminded of the history of this country and the history the aspect of race and the importance it plays in our history. And we need to remind ourselves of that as we go into our communities to engage the people that we need to have a relationship with. And so I'm committed to continuing the discussion here on grounds and throughout this community. You know, I'm fearful that the reputation of this great place is damaged because of incidents like this, and we simply can't allow that to happen.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Chief Longo.
Thank you so much.
Let's bring in ABC News contributor John Cohen, former counterterrorism coordinator at the Homeland Security Department, also a former police officer. And I want to talk to you in that former capacity most of all. Your reaction to what the chief said. He said right away it was disturbing.
Well, Chief Longo is a great chief, and he runs a fine department. He has a very difficult challenge, though, ahead of him. One, his community is reacting to events that his officers were not a part of. And as he pointed out before, this is one of a series of events that have emanated from that university that have been thrust on the national stage and that he's having to deal with. Secondly, and most importantly, I think, that there are members of his community who have already made up their minds about what has happened. Even though the state police have just initiated their investigation, they will look into whether it was appropriate for those officers to approach the student. They will look into the circumstances of the arrest. They will look at the force. But some in the community have already decided that they know what happened.
And that really damages the relationship between community and police officers, which is so important across the country right now. So what do you do about that, and how important is that?
Well, it's critically important. Communities across the country are dealing with increases in heroin overdoses. They're dealing with gang violence. They're dealing with increasing crime problems. And as was discussed earlier in the show, we're dealing with a terrorist threat that requires close police-community collaboration. If we can't have an honest discussion between police and community about how they can work together to keep their communities safe, I fear we're just going to see a continuation of the problems we're experiencing.
And I would have to say that it seems that this should be done quickly. The community is looking for answers right away.
Well, it needs to be done quickly, yes, but it also has to be done honestly. And it is not helpful when public officials, whether they work at the university or whether they're part of the national government, mischaracterize or jump to conclusions prior to the facts being in regarding these types of situations. It's damaging, it's premature, and it introduces in a sense, fuel in a combustible situation.
Thanks so much for your comments this morning, John.